Hey everybody, Tommy Scoville. You're on the lifeboat. Riding on the lifeboat, riding on the lifeboat. Riding on the lifeboat, lifeboat. Good morning. So this one's going to scare the hell out of you. Maybe it won't. This one scares the hell out of me. So, uh, first of all, good morning. I'm Dennis N. Good to see you, and I hope to see you this evening. Going to be a interview this evening with Dennis. Pretty excited about that, people. Really am pretty excited about that. Tommy Bird, good to see you. Charlie Murphy, mom. So, boy, oh boy. If you're not hip to this concept, then this one is really something else, man. In the early 2000s, a drug made a appearance on the street in parts of Asia. It was really, really big in Russia, which is how it got the name crocodile. The drug is technically a bathtub version of a drug called desomorphine. And desomorphine came out in the 1930s and was developed and produced by Huffman LaRoche Pharmaceuticals. And it was a very fast-acting analgesic. So it's a painkiller, a fast-acting painkiller that is an opiate and has about 15 times the strength of morphine. So good, strong painkiller. Nothing like fent and the things that are on the street currently. You're going to be fine, Dennis. I promise you, brother. I promise you. Wouldn't lead you astray, man. We'll talk between now and then. If it's too much, we won't do it. But I got faith in you. So desomorphine started to be synthesized on the street. Desomorphine is a fine drug when it's made the way it's supposed to be made. Very fast acting and sort of straight up and straight down. It's very fast acting. It's not very long lasting, which is why desomorphine never really got. Hello, V. Good to see you. The reason that desomorphine never really became popular back in the 30s is because it doesn't last long enough. So it never really got much popularity until they realized how easy it was to make a bathtub version of it. And the bathtub version of it, you start out with a crap load of codeine, and which I'm allergic to, by the way. Amazingly, I don't do well with codeine, but I've taken it anyway. It's just anyway. So desomorphine was being manufactured by taking tons of codeine, which they were able to buy in Russia basically in mass because they sell something very similar to a Tylenol 3, which a lot of countries do. The United States being the one that seems to really regulate the hell out of codeine. A lot of people do not. So they would take codeine and they would mix it with, are you ready? Diesel fuel. I swear to God. They would mix it with diesel fuel or any other of the types of fuel. So you could do it with gasoline, you could do it with diesel fuel, you could do it with a bunch of other stuff. And they would mix a few other ingredients in there, but the vast majority, the largest ingredient in there is diesel fuel and codeine. And when they're done synthesizing it, what they've got is a bathtub version of desomorphine. It's an injectable drug. It has, the reason it got the name crocodile was largely because of what it does to the body. This is a drug that wears out your venous system basically on the first shot. So you inject this into a vein, that vein's dead. And so are most of the soft tissue around that vein. And you end up with necrosis and gangrene. And the people who injected desomorphine, the mortality rate was pretty close to 100%. So the people that injected this drug very often were dead within 6 months at the tops. It is like a lobster. Yeah, that's what happened to me is I get red, except I get it in streaks. But they would start to inject this desomorphine or crocodile, and your skin would look very much like a crocodile, which crocodile is the Russian name for the animal. And you would get this leathery, um, just necrotic skin. You people would have limbs falling off, literally, and because it wears out the veins so quickly. Very often it was hard to save these people because there was very little that could be done, and its mortality rate was almost 100%. I studied this stuff years ago. Deep dive studied it, read a bunch of stuff, couldn't stop reading about it because in the early 2000s, 2003, it made its first appearance and basically ran its course within about 3 to 5 years. You really were not seeing much of it left on the street. It is a drug done in desperation. People who were addicted to heroin who could no longer get it on the street in Russia started to make crocodile and buy crocodile. And it was one of the most depressing periods of time for drug use in the world, in the history of our planet, because there were so many people that were doing this. It was found in the United States in the early 2000s once in Arizona. And fortunately, it was found before it ended up who in there would mind to inject fuel, right? No problem. There was a local post to here, but it made me sad. Okay. Anyway, this was really, really ugly stuff. And a girl had smuggled a little bit of it from Russia into the United States. They caught it before it really hit the street and did anything. And they caught it in Arizona. So why are we talking about desomorphine? Well, Seventh Son sent me a message asking me if I was familiar with crocodile, if I had ever heard of this. I said, yeah, of course. This was, if you study drugs or you go down that rabbit hole at all, you're going to come across the history of crocodile. And then if you keep diving, you will find desomorphine, which in its pure form, the non-fuel version of desomorphine, you don't see it very often. They use it for certain kind of rare occasions, very similar to how they use other drugs for women who were allergic to certain drugs, painkillers, then could not use them for birthing. They needed drugs like desomorphine so that you could help someone who was allergic to the pure form of morphine get through birth, right? Things like that. And that was the original design. And that was about the only use that desomorphine had. But Seventh Son says to me, I know somebody in ICE who says that although they have not found desomorphine, crocodile, on the streets in the United States, they have found the precursors to make this in unbelievable quantities. So there are people, obviously, who are stocking up on chemicals to make crocodile. And there's a lot of it. And I thought, I don't see it, man. I just don't see it with everything that's coming in here. So I started to study this last night at about midnight West Coast time, and didn't sleep, because the more I took a deep dive into this, the more I found out that he ain't wrong. There is a ton. They have caught the chemicals necessary to make desomorphine. And they're talking, the stuff that they're finding isn't diesel fuel. They're finding a more pure form of the chemical to make this. It's going to have the same effect. But there is enough of this chemical that has been caught to make an ungodly amount of croc. And it's not one bust. If it was one bust, you could say maybe these people imported some stuff and they didn't know what they were getting. And maybe they tried to blow off a batch and realized what this stuff would do, yada, yada. No. They are continually finding that people have been bringing this stuff in pretty frightening. Yeah, crocodile. Buddha is familiar. There is a ton of these chemicals being found in the United States. And when I started doing this deep dive, um, it's first of all, it's a frightening thing. If you have any idea whatsoever of what this stuff does to people, then this is one of those drugs that will make you terrified to think that there's a chance, even an outside chance, that people are going to make this. But then you start looking at trank, and you start to think to yourself, if people are banging trank in places like Kensington, if you were to slip in a batch of Crocodile, it would probably be 6 weeks before people realized, maybe 8 weeks before people realized what they were doing. The reason that this drug is so frightening is, I mean, look, trank is frightening, right? Fentanyl is frightening. All of the stuff that are these bathtub drugs, these bathtub opiates that are hitting the street are all terrifying. The reason that croc is so terrifying is because one batch of this blown out in a city will absolutely flood any hospital nearby. This became such an epidemic in Russia that the Russian government just started killing people that they found making it. Literally, if you got caught in the manufacturing of Crocodile, most of these people didn't make it to trial. A lot of these people didn't make it to jail. Like if they found a clandestine lab that was making Crocodile, they just killed everybody in the room. Something we don't have the, I was going to say we don't have the guts. Maybe that was the wrong way to put it. We don't have laws that would allow this to happen. However, in Russia, they just went in and smoked everybody. And in doing so, the criminal element decided that it was not such a great idea to continue to manufacture this stuff. And Russia successfully stamped out Crocodile on the street. So it's very rare that you see it anymore anywhere in the world, other than by people who might make a batch for themselves and kill themselves in a short period of time. But there is nobody that is mass producing Crocodile. The amount of the chemical that is being found to make this is scary. It is. And you really got to deep dive. It's almost like, and you understand how search engines work, right? If you type in Tommy Scoville and everybody in the world types in Tommy Scoville, then you're going to get me even if you're not looking for me, because that's kind of how search engines work. They rate how many people are looking for things, and that kind of determines how traffic is going to be, and it kind of determines how much you're going to find of something you're looking for. It is difficult to find this, but if you start to do a deep dive, you will read articles about chemicals being confiscated, some of it already on the street, some of it being caught coming in from guess friggin' where they're catching these, the ingredients necessary to make decimorphine are coming from China and being caught before it hits actual U.S. soil. This to me is the most terrifying thing in the world, because if you stand back and you look at how drugs are being put onto the street in this country, it has been progressively getting uglier and uglier and uglier. And as people lose hope, as drug addicts, especially people addicted to opiates, as they start to lose hope, then croc is one of those drugs that is able to thrive. If you feel like the end of the world is coming and there's nothing left, and that's really the way it was. They did some great documentaries about it back in the early 2000s. Not Russian companies, obviously. But since the fall of the former Soviet Union, Americans have been able to get into that country easily. And it was American film crews that went over and did documentaries on Crocodile, where they interviewed people. And the documentaries are really heavy because the people interviewed for the documentaries are all dead by the time that the documentary comes out. And more often than not, these were people from their teens to the early 30s. So it's one of those things that really is just terrifying in the drug world. And, when Steve said, "Are you familiar with this?" I said, "You mean, decimorphine, Crocodile? Yeah, I'm very familiar with this. This is something that I've read a whole lot about." I said, There's no way. I don't believe that this is, man, there is so much of this chemical in the US. And if you're scratching your head and saying, if the chemical's here, why aren't they making it yet or whatever? Everything that has been happening in the opioid epidemic, the new and improved opioid epidemic in the United States since the elimination of heroin, for the most part. Random Toaster, good to see you, bud. Since the elimination of heroin in the U.S., and it is all but eliminated. It's not that it's not here. It's just here in such small quantities that, unlike every other time in history, if there's heroin in the U.S., and there is, no one's trying to sell it. They're not trying to push this. They're hoarding it. These are people that have been addicted for a very long time to this and are going to places, getting it themselves and bringing it here for their own consumption because they don't want to do fentanyl. And this is such a hard thing for people to wrap their brain around. If your drug of choice is not opiates, the idea that somebody would want to be bringing in heroin, right, as a safe alternative to a drug is something that is tough to wrap your brain around. But truth be told, and no one likes it when I say this, I catch a lot of crap every time I say this, just wanted to say hello and hope you all have a great morning. I have to get ready for work. Embrace the moments between the other stuff. Rebecca, I love that. Truthfully, I love that. It's a great piece of advice. So with heroin, believe it or not, and I'll catch some crap for saying this, but it is the truth. If you go back and you do some research, very few people overdosed on heroin and died from it. Sorry, it's the truth. And the reason is Narcan is such a great counteract to heroin that if all you're overdosing on is heroin, Narcan is like, you've never seen anything like it. You administer Narcan, and in a matter of seconds, the person's overdose threat is eliminated. Now, they're miserable, but their overdose threat is eliminated instantly. So with fentanyl, that's not the case. So as drug dealers and cartels found out that you could make fentanyl cheaper than you could produce heroin, and I mean big time cheaper, they started to phase out a drug that was more difficult to overdose on. Now, if you've never done opiates and you do heroin, you're going to die, and you're going to die quickly. But that's the same with just about any injectable opiate. What really becomes dangerous with heroin was when you started to mix it with other things. If you look at all of the stars that died on heroin, they all mixed it with something else. They all mixed it with another respiratory depressant, whether that respiratory depressant was benzodiazepines or whether it was a barbiturate or whether it was booze, whatever the case may be. A lot of the very famous overdoses, if you research them, the guy that played the Joker, he was in Brokeback Mountain. I can't think of his name at the top, but his overdose was an opiate, a benzodiazepine, and a sleeping pill. The guy from New York who overdosed on heroin, who had won an Academy Award, was Philip Seymour Hoffman. Same thing. Had tons of Xanax in his system. He was mixing booze and Xanax and heroin. That's a death sentence. Every respiratory depressant that you take in combination with a opiate increases your chance of death 5-fold, 10-fold. So, but heroin in its pure form, with nobody, with nothing adulterating it, and you're not cutting it with anything else, was actually a lot more difficult to overdose on than people think. I slept amazing last night. It's very rare to sleep a whole night through. 4 a.m. came way too fast. You know what? It's going to be one of those days for me, Ultra Maga. I got something going on. I have, and I'm not complaining, I assure you, but this morning, I've got a ton of people coming to see this house. This is the day when a ton of people, out of the blue, like nothing was happening, and now a ton of people are coming to see the house, and I've got Johnny Scoville staying here. So the house is covered from top to bottom with peppers. Might be a little vomit in the backyard. And some other things that need to be cleaned up. So it's going to be a very, very tough morning. I was kind of hoping to sleep in. Heather is struggling with migraines. And these days, I have a real appreciation for people who are suffering with migraines. So I told Heather that I would take it. Look at that. The guy has a star next to his name. I've never seen that before. The man's a star. No question. The man's a star. I don't know if you saw. Yeah, I ate a really hot pepper last night. I don't remember what the pepper was, but it was a pretty hot one that I did with Johnny. If you happen to be watching Chase the Heat, I know V was there, but it was a pretty hot pepper. It's funny. My tolerance has come back pretty quickly. I had not been doing a whole lot of pepper stuff, but all that milk is probably spoiled out there. I hosed it down, but so that the smell's not bad, but you certainly can see that there's a very large section of white that needs to be hosed down a little bit further. Thank you for the good luck. I'll take that. Yeah, the vomit has probably turned to cheese by now. There's probably something to that. I also need to, I have an ice pick in my forehead. I can barely see. Oh, man. Can we get some prayers for Full of Hope, please? I'm sorry to hear that. I really am. Full of Hope. That's awful. I'm really sorry to hear that. It is cottage cheese by now, probably. So that and the inside of the house, when the Scoville brothers get together, we do damage quickly. You know what I mean? We can just sort of trash a house in a matter of minutes. So last night I was able to get it like just fake enough to let somebody walk through. But today there are so many people walking through that when this is over, I'm going to have to go to work and stay at work. It's going to be one of those things. Thomas Stevenson, good to see you, man. I'm glad that you're here. So, Crocodile, I'm really hoping that maybe all of these ingredients can be used to make something else. Maybe there's another opiate that we don't know about. If in the quantities that these chemicals are being found in, if the next attack on drug addicts in this country is Crocodile, we're in deep crap. I promise you, we are in deep, deep crap. Now, they won't call it Crocodile. They will dress it up as something else because most drug users, most drug abusers, most drug addicts who have ever done an opiate are really familiar with the history of desomorphine and its bathtub version, Crocodile. And the reason is, as I said, there were some really great documentaries done back in the early 2000s about this garbage, and they're terrifying documentaries. They're terrifying. If you could see what this stuff does, the gangrene and the necrotic skin really takes on the look of a crocodile. And in the documentary, there would be people whose entire arms or legs or even torsos, because this stuff starts to crawl up your body. It is the most disturbing thing. It is an ugly drug. I've seen some videos about it. Yeah, it is the ugliest thing, as Scoob says. That nothing in the drug world is as disturbing as seeing somebody who is abusing the street version of this drug, the Crocodile version of this drug. So, my prayer is that maybe there's something else. Maybe there is something else that this stuff is being used for. But my fear is that it's coming to a city near you. And I'm going to have people who say to me, no one's going to do that in the U.S. But they're shooting trank in the U.S. and in epidemic kind of, the amount of people that are shooting xylazine mixed with an opiate. You never could have made me believe that that was a possibility if you had told me this 5 years ago. Never would have believed it. Horse tranquilizer and a painkiller made for an elephant mixed together would be found in all 48 of the lower states. And they are. There is not a state in the U.S. that people are not doing trank in. And the vast majority of people doing trank are injecting it. This is a drug you can get into your system in other ways. You can swallow trank, you could snort trank, you could smoke trank. It's not how people are doing it. So the kind of desperation that we're seeing in people who are abusing opiates, it just almost makes sense that if this was an attack, and I have always said that the chemicals that are ending up in the arms of opiate addicts in the U.S., This from day one has been an attack. This has never been about getting anybody high. They started with a much weaker version of fent. When fent was first coming across the border, and it's been coming across the border for a long time. It seems like this is something that we've been dealing with for the last 4 years. That is just simply not the case. When I was still addicted, which was 8 years ago, 9 years ago now. Well, 8 years this June, but 9 years ago in prison, we were already getting fentanyl. And the fentanyl that we were getting in there was not the ridiculous strength version that we're getting now. It was coming in powdered form, and it was a relatively safe drug. If you were somebody that had already done opiates, I never saw anybody overdose on it. And in prison, you see drug overdoses. You see drug overdoses from heroin because there are so many people that aren't really addicts. People who go into prison who are alcoholics will begin to do any drug they can because they can't get alcohol daily. You can get alcohol in prison, but getting it 7 days a week is a little bit more difficult. Whereas drugs, and especially opiates, are always there because the people who are addicted to them will make that stuff get there no matter what they have to do. But I probably spent about 2 months doing nothing but fentanyl, and it was a pretty safe version of the drug. They have progressively made it stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until it is killing everybody that's doing it. That so many people who take this die now. It is absolutely phenomenal. And if you look at it as a rollout of dangerous chemicals, it's not a stretch to think that in desperation, if the next batch of drugs to hit the street is decimorphine, I would see people doing it. I know that just sounds bizarre, and you think no one's going to do that. I can't believe people are doing trank. And it would take a while for the people doing trank to not even realize that it wasn't trank they were doing. Once again, really up quick, really down quick. And if they make decimorphine and they cut into it xylazine, no one's going to know for 6 months until all of the people who are doing it are dead. And as opposed to, again, people, I really believe this is World War III. I have said that from the very beginning. And very much like, hey, Dilrod, good to see you. Very much like warfare. If you shoot someone and they pass away, that's the goal of warfare, yes? But if you shoot someone who doesn't die, 2 people need to carry that person off of the battlefield. And very often that is a better case scenario for war. Now, if you were to flood every single hospital in the U.S. with people who were suffering from the skin problems and the necrosis of the skin of crocodile, you will shut down every hospital in this country. And if you don't think so, do a deep dive on what's happening to the hospitals in and around Kensington Street. They have the vast majority of people in those hospitals now are in there for wound care, and these are long processes. If you go in and you have a very serious infection brought on by intravenous drugs, I've told the story many times here on the boat before. Years ago, right before I went away for the last time, or maybe it was right before I went away for the bank robbery. I don't remember, but there was a guy I knew here in town who Belgian waffles and pears with strips of bacon. He does this to me every time he's here. The man doesn't just have a bad breakfast. You know what I mean? It's a true story. Nobody does breakfast like M. Hunt. Man, you make me jealous. Anyway, I knew a guy, and I was picking up dope at a house, and he came by, and his arm was huge. And I as a young buck, I took courses to make it so that I could be a ski patrol, and you had to have EMT training. In fact, they wanted EMT intermediate training. So the ability to intubate and the ability to do some of the other things so that if somebody really gets hurt trailside, you can get them to the bottom of the hill so that, they can get some treatment. So I went through all of that. And for that reason, if somebody had a bad infection, I usually ended up seeing them. And I'm not going to get too graphic on here, but I would take care of the wound. I would lance it. I would drain it. I would pack it with cotton, do basically the same thing they would do at the hospital, because there are many people who abuse intravenous drugs who are terrified to go to a hospital because they think they'll be arrested, which is idiotic. It really is. If you're hearing me, go to the hospital. They're not going to do anything to you. They don't arrest people who go to the hospital. Even if you walk in and, I never lied to a doctor. They'd say, what happened to your hand? I shot heroin and it got affected. You know what I mean? You just tell them what's going on. But this kid didn't want to go. And they brought him to me for the purpose of me draining his abscess. There was no abscess. An abscess is a pocket. This kid had a full body infection. And I said to him, this is cellulitis. This is not, I'm not a doctor, but I promise you there's no pocket. You can't see, where it's getting. It's just the entire arm, the entire top part of his body that was swelling. I said, you have to go to the hospital. There's no option. There's nothing I can do for you. Promise me you're going to go to the hospital. And he said, sure. Tommy, I'll go today. As soon as I leave here, I'm going to go. I need one more shot before I go. And I can understand that. So I left him. 5 days later, I'm back at the same place to go pick up dope. And his car pulls in, but he's not driving it. And he's not driving it because he cannot use his arms in that way. Like, he's hurting so badly. And now both of his arms are that big. And he's got red stripes going down his body. Like, this is the beginning of the end. And I looked at him and just said, his name was Cam. I said, oh my God, Cam, look at you. I'm like, dude, you're going to the hospital now. He said, yeah, listen, as soon as I get dope. I go, no, there's not any dope. We're going to the hospital now. Or I'm going to kick the crap out of you in the condition you're in, which is really going to be a bummer. Like, he couldn't move his arms. So he had a little El Camino, not a cool one. One of the last years that they made. So we forced him to the hospital, literally. Like, we drove there and made him go in. And when he got there, he said, I don't know what happened. I got bit by a bug. I'm like, no, he's been shooting dope. And I said, this is through his entire body. And they threw him on a gurney. And like, you're going in now. Everything else that was happening in the ER stopped because this guy was this close. And turns out he had abscesses on his heart, on both lungs. They cut him from here to here. Right? The entire thing, like a triangle of skin that was necrotic enough that it couldn't even be put back. It had to be removed. They left it open. They ended up taking a graft off the back of his leg. And it doesn't sound funny, but it is. The hair grows the wrong direction. And I know they did it on purpose. I know it was one of those things that they did because the guy was an idiot and he had it coming. But like, the hair on his arm grows in one direction, except the graft skin where the hair grows in the opposite direction. And it just looks like chicken skin. It's a very odd thing. But he spent 12 weeks in the hospital to get this infection gone. Now, multiply that by 5,000. If Crocodile hits this street, our hospitals will be so overwhelmed, the amount of money that we will be spending, because I promise you, like my friend, I don't have any money, there's no insurance, there's no nothing. And we don't turn people away in this country. You may get BS'd if you live in another country that, poor people die because they don't have insurance. There's never been somebody turned away from a hospital in the United States of America because they don't have insurance. Please take my word for this. Now, you could go to a specialist, but if you go to an emergency room, they treat whoever walks through the door. American, illegal, whatever. Everybody gets treated. It has always been that way. It's been a law since the beginning of time. Anybody that goes into an emergency room gets treated. And we will overwhelm the hospital system in our country the way that we're overwhelming the hospital system near Kensington right now. Every hospital near Kensington is slammed. It's so bad right now that they're opening up tent hospitals for no other reason than to treat wounds. These are triage wound care centers. So for those of you who pray that this crocodile crap does not hit the street. Pray that these chemicals are here for some other drug. But we are importing, we being somebody in the United States, is importing massive amounts of this chemical. And my hat's off to Seventh Son for reaching out to me and telling me about this, because I promise you, people, I would not have found it without him. I mean, I know what crocodile is. I know what desomorphine is. I know the whole history of it. But you could not have convinced me that the drugs to make this stuff are in the U.S. right now, and they are. And they are in buttload size quantities. The amount of crocodile that we could be making right now in the U.S. is frightening, just by how much they have seized and how much they have discovered. God knows what they haven't discovered. God knows what they haven't seized. And if you look at this as a concentrated effort on our country, it's the perfect storm. Start out with fentanyl that doesn't kill people. Start to jack it up to stuff that does kill people. When they start pissing and moaning about how long or how short acting, I should say, the fact that the drug, as a drug addict would say, has no legs, like you get high for 4 or 5 hours and then you're sick again. Add xylazine so that when the person injects it, they get the opiate, takes away the sickness, and then the xylazine knocks them out. And for 8 hours, they're unconscious. They feel like they're getting a much longer buzz, but when they wake up, they need another injection instantly. And so once the xylazine starts getting cut in, and then the nitazines roll in next, right? This just looks like the perfect storm of how you attack a country with drugs. I pray I'm wrong. I really do. I pray I'm wrong. But as of the 2-year mark here on the lifeboat, we haven't been wrong yet. And I'm not happy about that. I'm not. I wish to high hell that we have been wrong with every prediction that we made. But when they were saying it was 180 overdoses a day, and we said there's no way it's 180 overdoses a day, it's so much higher than that. Back then, we were saying that it was probably closer to 250. When they were telling us 200, we were telling you it was 300. When they said it was 300, we've been right at every turn. Not happy about it. But you don't have to be a genius to do this either. You can pick 5 big cities, pick any holiday, and go look at how many drug overdoses there were in those 5 cities during the holiday, 4th of July weekend, whatever, because they don't report them except on holidays normally. So pick a city in the U.S., check out what the drug overdoses were on the 4th of July or on St. Patrick's Day or on Cinco de Mayo or anything like that, and just add up the big cities. And if that number is more than what they're telling you the entire country is doing on a daily basis, then you're getting lied to. That has been the case since we started the lifeboat. And we started talking about Barry Seal et al. You know what, John Doe? Yeah, no question. He's making reference to a government agency that is an alphabet government agency, and what they did from South America, and we talked about this on the boat a couple of times, but how when we were messing with the Contras in South America back in the 80s, how the cocaine epidemic, the crack epidemic of the 80s was brought to you by an alphabet agency in the United States. It starts with a C, ends in an A, and they have been an active participant in the drug trade forever. I get people that get pissed every time I say this. Oh, come on. Why would we do that? Here's why we would do that. If you want to do something in this country and it's going to cost you more than $50 million, which if that's your bank account, is a crap load of money, right? If you got $50 million in the bank, life's good. If you're trying to attack another country or send troops to another country, $50 million is nothing, right? It isn't even going to get you there. So if you want more than $50 million for a black op, right? Someplace that you want to go that you don't want to tell everybody about, you got to go to Congress and you got to tell them what you plan on doing. Now, the central people don't like doing that. They don't like going to Congress and telling them what they do. They're spies. They want to do what they do and not tell anybody about it. So they have to raise money in huge quantities. And boy, oh boy, drugs are really a great way to make money in huge quantities. And when we were in Vietnam, we had the first opioid epidemic in the United States. It was heroin, and we hit 7,900 deaths in 1 year from drug overdoses, and the country went nuts. It made the front page of every magazine in the U.S. Huge, 7,900 people. Can we allow this? Now we're over 108,000 a year. But Vietnam, heroin. South America, cocaine. Went back to Afghanistan, heroin. Are you seeing, no matter where we go in a war, as we come back, so does the drug problem from that war. And that's not an accident. If I were to say to you today, how many places do you think the U.S. currently has troops doing something on this planet? And I've done this on the boat before. And if you're logical, you're going to go, well, we got to have some people in the Middle East, right? I guarantee we got people in the Middle East. And we've probably got some people in at least a couple of countries in Africa. And you start going down and you might go, I bet you we got people in at least 8 to 10. But if you realize that it's over 100 places that currently we've got troops doing things clandestinely in about 100 different countries or 100 different places. Because sometimes it's multiple places in one country. But you think they're going to Congress and asking for money for all that? They're not. They're slinging dope. They're killing people on the streets. The alphabet agencies have been involved in the drug trade for as long as there's been a drug trade. Sorry, true. But that is absolutely the way it is. The lovely guy starting stuff purposely, jumped slightly off the sidewalk when he saw me. Be careful, Scuba. Please be careful, Scoob. Yeah, exactly. The very the H-dub, absolutely. He was absolutely at the helm for a long period of time, and I don't mean when he was president. I mean, you know what I mean. John Doe knows what I mean. Caffeine helps me with migraines sometimes. Sometimes it literally takes going back to bed to help. I'm not having a whole lot of luck with anything with my migraines, but I think mine are from a different. Anyway, so funny. My state is known for coffee, but I won't drink it. I don't know that I could get through without it. Scoob, take a deep breath, hon. Take a deep breath. If you are aware of the fact that someone is doing something to push your buttons, then you've already got one leg up. You're not going to let this person do anything to make you do anything. The sun is coming up earlier and earlier every day, people. But I'm going to end here because I'm not going to make a full hour. I'm going to miss the sunrise. But I want to end with something that I think I say all the time here on the lifeboat. But please, please, please do not miss this, because this is the most important thing. I don't care if you've never done a drug. 5% of what is going to happen to you in your life, you have absolutely no control over. There is nothing you can do, right? Somebody comes up, they slap you in the face, they do whatever, right? Cancer attacks you. Whatever happens that you cannot control at any level. You got a car wreck, your mate ends up becoming a dirty, filthy cheater that's not worth the, Anyway, 5% of what happens to you in your life is what happens to you and that you have zero control over. The 95% you will always have complete control over, and that is how you cope with all of that. If you find out that you have a terminal illness, that's 5%. There's nothing you can do about that. But there are people who turn the remaining time they have on their planet into something beautiful. That's the 95%. There are people who don't, and you can't feel bad. You can't cast aspersions on how anybody deals with tragedy. But the day-to-day stuff, somebody treating you like a jackass, somebody being a jerk, somebody trying to get your goat, train a human. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. I am loving life. Peace and love to all. Man, how much do you love it when somebody comes here and says, I am loving life? Sobriety rocks. It really does. It is a much better way to go through life. Take it from somebody that spent a pretty decent amount of time on the other side of the aisle. It is a whole lot better to go through life that way. Cheryl Niles. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Cheryl, but I grew up with a crap load of Niles. I grew up in the Northeast, and there was a bunch of people that whose last name was Niles. Full of hope. I hope that you say a prayer for your head. I really hope that you feel better. Christ, biggest rock star ever. No argument here, man. Now you people know how I feel about that. No argument here at all. At all. Absolutely the rock star. In fact, there's only been one rock star. I'm going to agree with my man, Methodical Hunt. Yeah, knew a lot of Niles. Man, did I grow up with a lot of them. Full of Hope seems to agree too. I would say that there's a lot of people that agree here. Well, if you know that that's the problem, Scoob, if you know that it's just brought on by jealousy, give them a big you-know-what-eating grin and walk by. Nothing pisses off people that want you angry more than when you don't get angry. For real. You know how many people just dream on a daily basis of making me mad? The death threat people, the people who have their own YouTube channels that do nothing but talk about how I get high or how I molest sheep or whatever the going, whatever they decided to talk about. I haven't watched one since December 4th of the year before, December 4th, 2 Decembers ago, when I said, I am just never going to another page to see what somebody says about me. People send me emails and go, do you know what this guy said in the video? Man, don't send me that email. I don't care what they said in the video. Let them do whatever they do because they're never going to get a rise out of me. I don't care. I got a mission in life. And if what you're doing does not further my mission, I don't even pay attention to you. What it comes down to, and it's a difficult thing. It is the most difficult thing of my life. It has been harder for me to learn than virtually anything having to do with sobriety, the 595. This was something that Q almost had to beat me up to get me to acknowledge and accept. But I used to say, oh man, that person makes me so mad. And he would go, yes, they do. Yes, they do. They make you mad because you let them make you. You let them make you. And boy, the more often he said that, the more it started to really just piss me off. The concept that someone could make me anything. No. And when you realize how awful it is to allow someone to make you. All right, my ex-wife, I've told this on the boat, but if you're new here, my ex-wife, while I was in prison, stole all of the money that the government, when all of that money came out during C+ math, and they were giving rounds of free money to everybody in the US. They gave it to everybody in prison. True story. But I was walking out the door. So I didn't file. I just said, I'll file when I get on the street. So I got on the street and I had about $8,000 coming to me, which is a really nice way to start your new life. And when I went to file for it, they said, we already mailed you that money. I said, well, that would be difficult. I don't have an address. The hell you mean you mailed me that money? Well, they mailed it to my ex-wife. She stole $8,000. She stole $52,000 in unemployment benefits that she filed for under my name while I was not around. Then she took out a business loan for about $36,000 in my name while I was in. Now, I'm not letting her make me anything. I'm not. I could let that destroy me. I could sit there and go, you know what? Now I've got no way to get on my feet. Everybody else in this halfway house just got $10,000 in free money. I got nothing. I got nothing coming. That's 5%. I can't control what she did. I can't. I can control how I react to it. So I just got 2 jobs instead of 1. And I learned to work harder. And you know what's crazy? All of those people that got that free money at the halfway house crashed and burned. I'm dead serious. If you had handed me $8,000 as soon as I walked out of prison, I don't know if I'd be here right now. I really don't. I watched those guys with a pocket full of money go, maybe I'll just get high once. I just kept going to work. And I watched people buy Beats by Dr. Dre, and they bought new clothing, and they bought all these things. I bought a pair of jeans at Walmart. I had a couple of T-shirts. I literally would come home at the end of every single workday, throw my clothing in the washing machine and let it sit. And when I would get up in the morning, right, with a couple of hours left before I had to go to work, I would throw them in the dryer. And I did that every single day because I didn't want to buy 3 pair of pants. It didn't make any sense. And I didn't buy anything except cryptocurrency. And now I'm exactly where I wanted to be. I'm exactly where I wanted to be. And I've been really, really blessed. But do not let Do not let anybody make you anything. You're better than that. That sun is coming up, peeps. I'm going to go outside and I'm going to watch God's flashlight come over the top of that hill and tell me that today is going to be a hell of a day. This evening, I anticipate doing an interview on the lifeboat. If by some chance I don't, I'm still going to be on the lifeboat, but I'm really hoping to do an interview there tonight. And hopefully my guy will be there. Hey, Jerry Harmitrage. Jerry, good to see you, man. Been a minute. Hope you're doing well, man. Good to see you. I love it when we have reunions on the lifeboat. Good to see you, bud. Happy you're here. And hopefully, Jerry, you're doing great. Jerry's one of the he was an early lifeboat guy. Glad that you're here, man. Glad that you're here. I would never involve my kids. Good advice, Rick. Today is a good day. Trust me. You know what? Man, they're all good days. Charlie Mullins. Appreciate you, Charlie. I love you, bud. Full of hope. You are in my prayers. Pray that your migraine goes away. I understand how bad those are. I really do. Everybody, one of two things is going to happen today. It's going to be a good day or it's going to be a crap day. The longer I stay sober, the more I realize that it isn't the outside elements that determine whether or not a day is going to be good or crap. Whether a day is going to be good or crap is all right here, man. For real. Every bit of it. You can throw anything you want at me. I've got some health issues. I got a lot of things that are coming down the pike that aren't great. I've got some problems. But you know what? Today's going to be a hell of a day. And it's going to be a hell of a day because I'm going to make it a hell of a day. Well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, my friends. I really am. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. I remember having a conversation with you. I was on a walk out there about this time of day. I remember our first talk on the telephone, Jerry, and I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're still on the right path. Makes me really happy. So, people, make it a good day. It's your decision. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but I promise you it is. The 5% is going to keep coming, right? So take serious control over the 95 because you own that. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville. We'll see you this evening. God bless every one of you. Make it a hell of a day.